Good morning. So we're here on the wonderful Snowdon to talk about 4 things to improve your landscape photography. So let's go for it, see what we can find. So, time for tip number 1. So tip number 1 is planning, and this little thing is absolutely essential for that. I use 2 fantastic apps. So the first app is PhotoPills. Now, PhotoPills allows you to see the position of the sun. It also allows you to see the position of the stars, and you can plan your route, and you can find your map. You can look at a topographical map and really look at the lie of the land, where the sun's coming up, and how you can plan your entire positioning of the light, so to speak, when you're in the landscape. It also works brilliantly for astrophotography as well. So a situation like this, you can work out where the light's going to hit what and when, within reason, because you can never plan weather. So secondly, the OS app is absolutely brilliant. It's a small subscription every year, and I love it. I mean, I always take paper maps with me as well, but the OS map just lets you track your area by GPS, and it just allows you to see other routes that people have planned. And it's a brilliant way of not only planning landscape photography, but planning a good walk as well. So part of planning is also working out what to photograph and when to photograph it. Now, I knew that I wasn't going to come up all the way up Snowdon before sunrise, so now it's time to do a little bit of, almost feels like cheating, and get out the drone. There you go, this is number 2. So just have a spirit of adventure and just get out there. Don't be too, sometimes we can just be too serious about it, kind of waking up for sunrise, making sure everything's perfect, and making sure that, wait a minute, I'm going to make sure that my, not completely blown out, there you go, making sure everything's perfect. Making sure that you kind of treat it with great seriousness and kind of not steer off the path. And I think a lot of that is just utter rubbish. You just got to experience the landscape. You just got to get out there and enjoy it and adventure. If you don't feel like you're adventuring or enjoying it, then you just don't get to see scenes like this. Look at this beautiful scene here with the light just gently setting, rising even, over Snowdon. Get it right in a minute. It's beautiful, and I mean, sometimes things just get too serious. So from here, I've just been taking photographs of the light. So if we come and have a look at the back of the camera. I've just been taking it out, just to brighten it up again. Okay, right. So, what I've been doing with this is literally just taking a shot of the ridge here. There's this beautiful line of light here, which is absolutely fantastic. So I've got it on at the moment, f11, 13th of a second, and ISO 100. And that is enough in order to get that quality of light. Now what I'm going to do, not unusually, is I'm going to bracket it, and I'm going to use a bracket of 3. Now bracketing, just in case you're unaware of what it is, it just takes 3 different exposures. I'm going to now just start off with my 2-second timer, if I can get there. Right, there we go. There we go. And that's just to steady the camera. Okay, so composition in mountains is really, really important that you look for not only big vistas, but also for the really small things, the small details that make a really, really big difference in your photography. So here in this scene, I'm looking at leading lines. This is an old slate mine, and there are some beautiful shapes and colours in here. It's fantastic. And just behind me, I'll get out of the scene for a minute, I'll just refocus it. You can see this lovely scene going in towards this this opening that would have been somebody's dwelling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move around the scene. I'm going to shoot handheld, and what I'm going to try and do is get different compositions using, for instance, there's a little puddle down there. I'm going to use some reflection and get some of the mountain reflected in the background, and I'm going to use the leading lines of these of the small kind of cliff faces on both sides, going towards that the start of the abandoned house. So let's go for it and see what we can do. Okay, so there's a really nicely placed little puddle here. You might be able to get some reflection of the mountain if we get it on the right. Right composition there. Okay, that's looking good. So I've taken quite a few in this area. What I've been trying to do is I've been trying to work landscape, I've been trying to work portrait, and trying to make the most of this space, trying to make the most of this, trying to make the most of this environment. Sometimes working handheld is fantastic because it just frees you from that need to kind of set up the tripod all the time. Sometimes that can stifle your composition. So let's see what else we can find. So composition is really important within every image. Now, this image, I'm not 100% happy with it, but there are some interesting elements within the composition. So first of all, we've got this line here, and we have this line here, and these two are repeating each other within a similar space within the composition. Then we've got the leading lines on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, drawing you in towards this opening here. Now, can see something similar but with a completely different subject matter with a shot that I took of Snowdonia the previous morning at 8 o'clock. So here we've got a really centralized composition, again with a line on the clouds coming in there, and then a line in the water coming in there, giving it that central pull to then kind of show these two birds in flight. When I was taking this, I saw this as a square composition, not as the rectangular composition that came out of my camera. Looking at this composition, this is slightly different. So first of all, we've got this kind of point where there's lots of lines of convergence, 3 lines of convergence coming together. Now, this image works quite well with what's called the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds is a compositional tool, and it states that if something is within the thirds, so for instance, if you have a horizon line or a land line within 2 thirds, it can make a more interesting, more dynamic composition as opposed to the line cutting across the horizon line, cutting across the middle of the composition. It can be used for all different types of landscape, and it's just to create more kind of dynamic movement in the landscape. The other part of the rule of thirds are that there are these red circles here. These are the intersection points, the points where they cross over.
And generally, if you have something near that intersection point, it also makes the composition interesting. So up here, we've got the kind of crossing over of lines, and down here, we've got the edges of this abandoned mine. But more importantly, and when I was taking a photograph of this on my drone, I saw this straight away, and it just made me laugh. This portrait line here with almost like a head and shoulders, and then this kind of hair above. I really like that. And part of composition is just bringing a bit of joy to the image and looking at it from a kind of fun point perspective as well. And then to the last composition here. So we've got this leading line, this path taking you all the way up. So again, this was taken from a drone at the top of Snowdon. So this line really leads you into the space. It then leads you across to these hills and then finally around. And you can see here that again, it's quite a centralized composition. We've got almost the rule of thirds coming in again. We've got roughly a third sky and 2/3 ground. There's a centralized element, which is this peak here, and then a peak on the left and a peak on the right with the leading line taking you in. Now, with landscape, composition is really important because if you don't have these visual elements within your landscape, it can be quite flat and boring, and it doesn't tell the story you want to try and convey.
Okay, so number 4. This is probably the most obvious, but it's probably the most important, arguably, and that is to know your limits. In mountainous areas like this, as well as planning, you've got to think about what you can do in a day or in 2 days. And if you're constantly just kind of pushing yourself, you can get yourself in a lot of bother. Bearing in mind you've got a lot of kit on your back and you've got a lot of hours of going down the mountain as well as going up it. So, I hope you enjoyed it. So the 4 most important things then. Number 1, to plan. Number 2, to enjoy it and adventure. Number 3, and most importantly, focusing on the composition of smaller, more intimate areas and large vistas. And number 4, knowing your limits, knowing when to stop and knowing how to plan your time. So, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.